Hello. I'm just going to give an update here. Day one of my trip to Washington has concluded, and I just got to finish up a few emails, and then I got to get to bed. My first meeting is again at 8 o'clock in the morning, so it's going to be a little bit busy. I like the fact that I can get in before most other people are allowed in to the Senate and House office buildings. It's kind of a fun perk, but that's from building relationships with the staffers and the legislators themselves. So that's cool. And it's this isn't something. This is not something that other people probably couldn't do. It's just maybe the drive to do it or the understanding on how to. I remember back in high school we kind of covered it, but we didn't really explain exactly the whole process. The legislative part is difficult. It's not something easy. It looks monotonous because it is. And this is not going to be an easy, simple come to Washington for a couple of days and write legislation and strike this and amend this and get a new bill. I can see a path that we're going to be taking. It's not going to be easy. And to my surprise, I'm getting a lot of bipartisan support on a couple of my things. But I think this is mostly because this is their real position. The hard part about this is getting it through on a public realm to where absolutely everything you do is scrutinized to a point of absurdity. This is a part of American history that it has happened in the past. During the Constitutional Convention in the uh, 1790s, they had to look at getting this done, but not having absolutely everything be public before they could get it out there. Because if you can imagine, if absolutely everyone was able to dictate every minute detail, you're never gonna get anywhere. Sometimes, uh, there's a quote from the Captain America movie Civil War where the guy says, "Sometimes you can get more done with a room full of three people than 100." And I think there's a point to that. I think you have to have a cool head. I think you have to go in there with the position, something that you want, something that you know that they could also benefit from, but you also have to understand that they have the same goal that you do, but there's other things that they also have to be mindful of. And I think that's something that when you're negotiating positions, you can they talk about the different things they trade off all the time. And a lot of this rhetoric is just stuff that they can trade off because it makes it sound like they're giving up something so dear, but in the grand scheme of things, they have a backup plan for it. They're compensating for whatever they're giving up in other ways. But on the public sphere, the support is so rigid on baselines and rhetoric. I don't know how these people keep their sanity. Um, it was great. I got to meet with a lot of really interesting people today. Some of these senators and these Congress members, you see them on TV, but when you're actually in their offices, and some of them have got some really amazing offices. I want to give a shout out to Senator Alexander from Tennessee. His office is amazing. It's like going into a museum from the Appalachian Mountains. You should come see it. It's really cool. Nancy Pelosi's office is very nice. It's very warm and it's very welcoming, and you get a sense that you're somewhere where important things are done, and the staff is very excited to see you. They're happy. They it's not as partisan as you think. They'll talk to anybody. They just want you to be respectful, and I think that's something that we should be able to give them. Um, I want to give a shout out to Senator Grassley. Uh, Politics beside, what your opinion is on him as a politician, this guy loves Iowa more than I could possibly tell you. He does have a sense of what he's doing is the right and the best thing for Iowa. Now I know not everyone agrees with that, but he's looking at it hundreds of years in the future from now, trying to find a way to make all these parts fit now for that future. And sometimes you have some really bad pieces you got to make fit into something. And so it's not a perfect world. He knows that, but wow, this guy is really genuinely nice. And I know him and I have had our words in the past. Um, but he remembers me, and he's a nice guy. And anyone who gets a chance to meet him, you should be very honored, because this is a guy who's one of the most powerful people in the country, and he's from Iowa. Um, I also want to give a shout out to Representative David Young from Iowa 3rd. This guy's doing his job. Again, you might not agree with him on policies on absolutely everything, but no one can. This guy loves to meet with constituents, and he's probably the most average guy you would never realize. This he's a policymaker. He's a lawmaker. He's got the walk and the talk of a legislator, and he's really sharp. He can have a conversation at any level. He's very well educated on a lot of things, not just his specific areas within Congress. So people in the third district of Iowa, you guys got you have a real winner on your hands, and I think you guys should be really proud of the representation you have in the state of Iowa. I also want to give a shout out to David Lobjak. Your staff is very commendable. I know you are the minority of the minority of the minority of the minority in the Iowa delegation, but it's fun because you turn around a corner in the building he's in, and you see that Iowa flag, and his doors open, and a lot of other people's doors weren't open, and it's like walking into like your best friend's house in his office. You get a really good sense of welcoming and home. That's cool. I don't think all the offices out there have that. So I like whoever decorated your office, Congressman Mobshak, give them a raise. Um, I also met with Chuck Schumer today, and this guy's busy. Again, politics aside, you may not like everything he says or how he does it. I know a lot of liberal Democrats, even very, very far left ones, think he's a sellout or whatever you want to call him. But I think he's not. I don't. I think he's true to his position. I think he plays to his position as well. I think he's a very skilled politician, and I think he knows how to maneuver around things because he has to. Again, this isn't a perfect world. He's got to do certain things that get other things that you don't know about dealt with before you have to deal with them and find out how the hard way that you don't like them. Um, he's more compromising than you would think. When it comes down to it, the hard decisions, the hard no's, he's there. Uh, I also want to give a shout out to Senator Carper. Uh, Also, great staff. It was the conversations did revolve around the Canadian drug imports and how to deal with the bureaucracy of the FDA. Because as Sanders, who sponsored the bill, has mentioned, there's a lot of bureaucracy that inhibits good life-saving drugs from being able to be used in the United States. And the over regulation, the bureaucracy of how that agency works to determine these things it might be beginning. It might be to the point of being archaic if it's inhibiting life-saving medications getting to people who desperately need them and at a price they can afford. Uh, and Ted Cruz agrees with this, and Sanders and Cruz. I mean, they did their televised town hall meeting, but Ted Cruz and Bernie Sanders, two very very opposing forces, have a lot of common ground, and it's nice to see that the other senators, some of the senators that voted against Sanders' bill, were more wanting to be careful that the fact that drugs that we didn't know where they were coming from, where the origins were, weren't getting into the country, and that we had to find a way to determine origins of the medication before we allow them into the U.S. market. And by fully letting in Canadian drugs before that happens, I mean there are some that are sliding in, that the small percentage that is getting through now will exponentially increase because of the open market and the demand for cheaper drugs, even compared to the already lower cost Canadian manufactured drugs, and so that the percentage of genuine Canadian drugs would decrease within the shipments because of all the non-Canadian manufactured drugs seeping into the shipments. And again, there's a question about the FDA. So we're we're not quite there yet, but I'm meeting up with Coons later on this week. I'm meeting up with Booker later on this week. I'm meeting up with Kirsten Gillibrand and Joni Ernst, and I have a meeting here very shortly, tomorrow morning, early, with Congressman Steve King, and meeting again in the office of Senator Warren on a couple of issues. I wrote her a nice little note today, uh, wishing her well. If you guys have seen what happened on the Senate floor almost a week ago, regardless of your politics, um, no one should be made to go through that type of embarrassment. And I'm not gonna call McConnell out on it. I mean, he had his points, I'm sure, but I think we should kind of move on for it. I encouraged her to keep doing what she's doing, regardless of my political positions. Her political positions may sometimes are at odds with each other, but at the same time, there are times where we're on the same page. And I told her that I respected her greatly and that I want to see her keep giving a voice to those who don't have one anymore. That is a genuine point that these people are trying to give. All these lawmakers is they're talking for people that don't have the ability to come up to DC and make all these laws. The staff in all these offices I've dealt with really are detail orientated and want to hear from you and want to discuss things, and they want it to be done in a manner that's constructive. That's all they want. That's all you gotta do is be constructive. Don't be criticizing on absolutely everything. Be concise. I mean, I'm rambling on a video right now, which is not the way to properly do it. When you're in one of these meetings, you're getting, I mean, especially when you're meeting up with some of the higher senators, the senator can only be there for maybe 30 minutes, and then you're building everything else around the staff, and then the staff compiles everything, and you're doing a lot of the development with staff, and then you meet up back with the senators later and kind of go over the terminology, the language, the outcome, the 20-year outcome. How's this going to affect things 20 years from now, 30 years from now? Some of these guys really think about that. That's important to them. Yeah, I might not be here 30, 40 years from now, but I want to make sure the things I did here are looked at as being things that we're proud of. And that matters to these people a lot. Um, Legacies, no matter how big or small, matter to anybody. So, uh, I encourage people to get involved like this. Yeah, I might have a little bit more connections just because of my family and being involved in politics for so long that I know how to kind of maneuver the system a little bit better than most. But I think more people should do what I'm doing. Uh, I've been meeting so many great people from all over the country that are doing this. Some of these staffers are hilarious. I mean, I've been traveling around doing stand-up comic acts and around the country too, and some of these people could definitely do that for a living if you actually get to talk to them, and not at anyone's expense but their own, and sometimes they're employers, but it's fun. They're having fun. They're fighting the good fight along with you, and they want to work with you. Just participate, talk, discuss. You know, that I'm one of the things I mentioned to Senator Warren is that let's keep these conversations up so that we can see that liberty and justice is served to all. And I think that's something we should be looking at. Is it's our position is our position, their position is their position, but the same. But it is a discussion about what our liberties are and what they mean to us and what we value. And we have a really great opportunity that most other countries don't. Yeah, you can go meet up with your government representatives in a lot of countries, but to have such an active participation, I'm a little hard pressed to think of a country where you have such easy access to your legislative body and can discuss these things even after the elections are over. Uh, England, France. I mean, I've been talking with a lot of people that are traveling throughout from the world here in DC, and one of the things they comment on is that yeah, we have access. The U.S. has access to their legislative bodies and their policymakers way more so than they do, and that's cool. And I think everyone should be acting upon that a lot more than what they are. But I'm rambling on now. I'm gonna. This my update was supposed to only be, like 5 or 6 minutes, and here I am at almost 20 again. I gotta be going to bed. It's getting late. Um, but things are going well, and I'm gonna keep up the good work. I am working for not. I'm working for everybody. I don't want to be just for the liberals or the conservatives, the Democrats or the Republicans. I want to try to make it for the people, regardless of your political background or positions, that you get something that you feel is needed, and that's really hard to do. But I'm working very hard to do it because this has become personal to me, to make sure that certain things are done in the proper way, and I just hope that when it's all done, that if I, that it matters, that it'll have some type of effect to not only the state of Iowa or the state of New York or Tennessee or really anywhere else I've traveled to and done things in, but that everyone from every state benefits. That's really what I want, and that's hopefully what the outcome will be. I was by the White House tonight, very shortly before former Secretary, no, not Secretary, Security Advisor, Security Advisor Flynn departed the White House. I saw that take place before everyone else did. That was cool. Not for him, but just to be on the front lines and see that type of stuff before everyone else does. That's still cool, even if I was there in Trump Tower meeting people like that all the time. Um, but at this level, it's a little bit different atmosphere, so it's cool. If you haven't been out to DC, you should really try. Like I'm staying on a campus for the hearing impaired, and this campus was founded. It was chartered by Abraham Lincoln, actually, and everything on this campus is designed for people with disabilities. More specifically, with people that are hearing impaired. Right after the Civil War, you can imagine there were a lot of them from all the explosions going off, and it's one of the oldest college campuses in the country. And all the money that this hotel makes goes to help these people do their development and helping them get permanent job placement. So I have mentioned to the legislative bodies that maybe don't know about this school, and they might know a little bit of it, but they've never been here. about how great it is, and maybe they should do more reaching out to the staff here, the administration of the university, to talk about the parents to help to learn more about what people that are going through, and because it wouldn't be because people who have these type of disabilities, blindness, hearing impairment, the struggle that these people are dealing with is quite intense, and I think the more that policymakers find out what these people are dealing with, I think that you'll see that policies are going to reflect that understanding of the world as it really is. And that's why I encourage anyone within any position or any type of livelihood, good or bad, does what I'm doing right now. Anyway, I'm saying goodbye for now. I'm definitely turning off this video recording device. Have a good night. Wish me luck.